I just wanted to elaborate um, on logic.
Mhm.
It being simply descriptive to how we experience reality functions. And so basically, there is the distinction between the map we create about reality versus what reality actually is. And logic is just part of the means by which we're creating this map. It
Are
is
you?
solely contingent on minds, and
Mhm.
it will not exist absent of those.
Would you say that the laws of logic would also cease to exist?
Yeah, they describe how reality functions, or rather how we experience for reality to function.
Mhm.
But on their own, as a descriptions, they're just language. Absent of minds, it will not exist. Reality would still, we assume, extrapolating from previous data, background data, we assume that absent of any minds, reality would still function the same way. It's just that there will be nobody to describe it.
Yeah, but I don't think that the absence of a describer negates the existence of anything.
Correct. This is not what I'm saying.
Right, but
If you
so
have
then
no,
so then logic would
Mhm.
still exist.
It wouldn't. How reality function would still be the same. It's just that the means by which we describe how we experience it functioning will not exist. The descriptives, logic itself, it's a language. The descriptive will not exist, but it will persist in function in the same way it does. Think about the law of say non-contradiction, for example.
Mhm.
A thing cannot be itself and another thing at the same time. Time is the predicate of this being a law.
Okay.
And so time is very relative. It's how we experience for reality to function.
Well, in the same time and in the same sense, yes.
Yes. And so if it was the case that reality was functioning so swiftly, or we were to perceive reality functions really slow, the change that we are supposed to have time to slap some labels on in order to make sense of what we see is changing
Mhm.
uh, might actually sort of completely diss the law of identity because we won't be having the time to process. And so we simply describe how it functions rather than
I
the
think I
laws of logic
understand what
being
you're
the case.
saying. Our
You did not
interpretation
understood.
No, our interpretation of logic would cease to exist, but the logical principles themselves would not.
No, logic itself will cease to exist because it's merely descriptive to how we experience things about reality. Much like language, much like mathematics.
Right, but the when I say the principles of logic would still exist, it would still be the case that something could not be itself and something else at the same time and in the same sense.
So the correlations and the means by which reality function would remain. It's just that
Right.
we will not be there to experience and describe it through the means of logic. Logic is a creation of the mind. The correlations are something that are innate in nature. This is what we describe, or rather, our experience of how reality functions and those correlations. So it's
So
basically the
so
map versus the territory, what we're discussing here.
if
We have
logic
the territory.
Mhm.
It is a particular thing or sets of things that interact with each other in a particular way that seems to be consistent from all we experience. And now we have the perception that we have about it,
Mhm.
the how we rationalize it, what we ascribe to those experiences it grants us with, and the means by which we describe it, which is all subjective things. So
So
the place will be still there and acts the same way it does. And absent of us to describe it, it will be absolutely irrelevant.
is logic subjective?
Yes, it describes subjective things though,
Right.
objective things.
So logic is dependent on who's considering it.
Yes, we created it.
Wait,
Its mind
no, no,
stands
no, no.
dependent.
From person to person, is it subjective?
No, the rules we have managed to create could be described as objective because they're applicable, like 1 plus 1 equals 2. So, if we apply the same sense, but we know that there is not only classical logic, there is different types of logics. It's all made up. It depends on which one you'd like to look how reality functions through. It's just a lens through which you've chosen to look at reality through.
Well, subjective means differing by subject or depending on the subject. Each
Stands
human,
dependent, yes.
each human an independent subject in that
Sure.
sense. So Why is it that all humans agree on the same three laws of logic if logic is subjective?
Because most of us experience reality the same way, and it's convenient to describe it in this particular way.
I wouldn't even say that most of us experience reality the same way. You can't prove that.
No, the correlations we experience, for example, the laws of identity, we kind of process information in much about the same relatively similar speeds. That's why law of identity exists.
You can't even prove that.
Wait, you can independently ask a person, are they capable of identifying objects or
Yeah,
slapping
but
labels of identity to things they experience?
just because they say yes doesn't mean that that is true.
And this is all it describes, though. A thing cannot be itself and another thing at the same time. You're either describing one thing or you're describing another. You cannot describe two things at the same time in the same
Right.
place.
So
It's
the
just, yeah.
laws of logic are not subjective then.
No, they describe objective things. They describe how reality functions, but because they're descriptive, they are subjective. They belong to the subjects that uses it, as is with any other language. Same thing with math. 1 plus 1, usually we take it to means it always equals 2, but it depends on what it is you want to describe.
Okay, give me an example.
You can describe sets of things.
Hold on. Just let me
Okay,
respond.
sorry.
Give me an example of an objective thing that logic describes.
Reality.
Not everybody perceives reality in the same way. At least you can't prove that they do.
Correct, but it's similar enough so that we can agree upon things.
You
like
don't
languages.
even know that. You can't even
It's
prove
safe to
that
assume, otherwise we won't be able to communicate.
You can't even prove that minds exist independently of your own.
Well, I have to grant it for any coherent conversation to be had.
Yes, so you can't then say logic describes objective facts.
No, it describes how we experience objective reality.
But how you experience reality is not the same that somebody else perceives
Sure,
reality.
but it's similar enough for those rules to apply to me as well.
You don't know that, though.
We do, because it's accepted as to be a law. That's why we agreed upon it. It's agreed upon thing. Much like definitions of words, much like anything else that's related to language, really.
Wait, the law of reality?
No, the descriptive to how we experience reality functions.
Okay, so you say that our experiences of reality are similar enough. Are you schizophrenic?
I don't believe so, no. I have no good reason to believe that.
Would you say that somebody that has schizophrenia, like severe schizophrenia, experiences reality
They recognizes it.
similar to the way that you do?
No, we know they don't. And they do as well know that sometimes they experience reality, sometimes they don't. They have means by which they discern them.
But they still have to follow the laws of logic, correct?
If they ought to describe, the experience about things in reality, yes. But if they ought to describe imagination and things that they know it's because of the illness, then logic might not be good enough to describe them.
Right. So their perception of reality, we can deem it to be illogical, correct?
I mean, we know there are, yes, I would agree to some sense, because we know that brain farts are a thing, misconceptions, misunderstandings, delusions, and all that exists.
So how can we know that their perception of reality is illogical if logic itself is subjective?
Illogical simply means not making sense, and quite a lot of the delusions usually don't. There is plenty of delusions that seems to be very coherent, which makes the person that experiences them really struggle with discerning what's real and what's imaginary.
But you said logic is how we describe reality.
Yeah, the correlates between reality, how we experience things function.
So if that person's reality differs from your own, how do you know they're being illogical and you're not, if logic is subjective?
Well, independent verifiability is important. If everyone was to be having this mental disorder, and it expresses itself in sort of relatively similar ways, then probably the laws of logic we would use as a descriptive to what we experience about reality would be different.
So
It's quite possible.
if every other person on Earth had schizophrenia except for you and was experiencing the exact same hallucinations, you would come to the conclusion that you are the one that's being illogical?
Yes, I would have no basis of discernment if this is the only, if those are the only criteria.
What if their hallucination violated the law of non-contradiction?
I mean, the masses would be the ones that conclude what the law of no contradiction would be. They are the ones that define it.
That makes no sense.
So you have reality, the means by which it functions, so at least how we perceive it does. And it seems to be persistent, and some of the things we describe as laws about it, we do so because they are consistent over time.
Is it possible that reality functions outside of our perception?
It's necessarily so. Our perception is simply an approximation of what reality is.
Right, but would reality itself be constrained by the laws of logic?
No, I don't see how. How can anything be restrained by descriptives?
Would it be possible, for instance, in reality, external to our own perception, of a star being a star and a planet, or a star and not a star?
No, it won't be possible because this is not how we experience reality to function.
Right, but if it is the case that reality actually did function that way, external to our own perception,
then we won't be able to know if this is the case. We can only ever describe how we experience things.
Is it possible that the general consensus is actually how reality functions?
It's possible to conclude that because the larger percent of people experience reality in this particular way, that seems to be very similar by their own admissions, in contrasting and comparing experiences, it is possible that our approximation of what it is and how it functions is very accurate enough, or at least good enough for us to be able to navigate through it.
Okay, so why then would it not be the case that reality itself also is subjected to the laws of logic?
Because those are descriptives of how we experience reality functions.
Can something be itself and not be itself at the same time?
Not the way we experience it, no.
What do you mean, not in the way that we experience it?
How we perceive time, our speed of processing information is where time is bound, is how we're bound by time, I suppose. Because we experience things in a slow enough pace, we can slap identities to those things. We can make sense of them. But if we were to experience it in such a way that we are not going to be able to ever actually make sense of the stream of information that's going through our minds, there will be no identity to slap on anything to begin with, because it's so fast-paced. And so the law of identity is basically determined by time. I suppose you can sum it up like that.
So you're saying that the law of identity, P equals P, doesn't necessarily have to be true?
It's only true because of how we experience reality. And truth mean
Can you demonstrate that that's
description of reality.
Can you demonstrate that that's the case? That it's only true because we perceive it to be?
Yes, it's in the descriptive. A thing cannot be itself and another thing at the same time. Time is the predicate. By definition, that's what it means.
Right, but time changing would be the way in which something gets out of this constraint.
Sure, if time was to function a different way, and we wouldn't be able to make sense of the stream of information that is crossing our minds, then we won't be able to slap identity, and this law will not exist.
You still can. Because let's take the statement, I am a male, right? And let's just assume for sake of argument that humans can change their biological sex, okay? I cannot be a male and a female. I can't be a male and not a male at the exact same point. right?
Sure.
By our perception. So even if time flows differently than our perception of it, something can't be itself and not itself at the same time. It doesn't say at the same time according to our perception of time. It just says at the same time.
Time is solely dependent on perception.
That's kind of irrelevant to what I
just
said.
because we experience time, it doesn't mean that it actually exists. It could be the case that the fundamental, I don't know, thing that reality is the block theory of time, where past, present, and future are all happening at the same time. It's just that we experience change because we're passing through it, which seems to be the major thing that physicists seems to be agreeing on, though it has not been demonstrated for. So linear time is just how we experience it. It doesn't mean it is the case. Basically, linear time, because linear time is how we experience reality, that's why we can, and we are capable of processing all that information, influx of information,
So
is why we can
essentially,
slap identities.
so essentially, one object is every object, or it's possible for one object to be not itself and every other object at the same time.
I will not be able to basically make sense of it even now. I cannot comprehend what it would mean.
Because it's...
But yes, if it's time dependent, then it depends on time, or rather how we perceive.
Yes,
things.
but the law of logic itself is dependent upon time.
It's dependent on how we perceive reality, yes. That includes time, because how we perceive it. Am I not making sense? Because this is the best I can do in describing what I'm trying to say.
You're making sense. It's just
Okay.
like this is such an incoherent position. As long as you accept that, I have no problem.
You simply acknowledge that
on.
logic. Yeah, but we are essentially admitting that logic is yet another language that we describe how we experience reality. That's it.
Right, but you understand that to ignore the way that we perceive reality just for the sake of like getting the upper hand in a debate is it just leads you to an incoherent position.
Oh, no, I'm not forsaking how we perceive reality. That's the important bit of it. It's because of how we experience reality. That's why it exists the way we recognize it.
I don't grant that.
Oh, well.
I don't grant that
I don't know what else to say.
I don't
sorry.
grant that the law of identity is solely dependent on human perception.
It's necessarily so. It cannot be any other way. Could you slap identity on something that changes very swiftly?
Yes, but you would need to demonstrate that our perception is not accurate.
What do you mean?
So if it's dependent on our perception and our perception is accurate, then the law of identity would be objective.
No, it wouldn't.
Yes, it would.
Objective means to be stance independent, and laws of identity and laws of logic basically are stance dependent. So is every other language.
And this is why I say
including mathematics.
This is why I say it leads to incoherence.
Well, no.
Because we don't have the language to describe a different scenario in which the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of excluded middle actually do not apply. It is impossible
Correct.
for our brains and our language to comprehend such a thing.
Indeed. That's why I'm incapable of giving you...
Which means it's incoherent, right?
Can a descriptive exist or occur if you're incapable of perceiving anything about anything at all? Well, okay, let me say that.
Mm-hmm.
You will not be capable to describe things that you cannot experience to begin with. If you have no experiences, there will be nothing to describe or to compute even.
Does the proposition exist that I know that I'm not experiencing something, because that in itself is an experience?
No, there is no influx of information that you would perceive sufficient enough for you to kind of come up with like the laws of identity, for example, or the laws of logic, generally speaking.
So I don't exist.
I mean, no, that's going to be given. That's the only thing that's certain, really. We can be certain about.
You can be certain that I don't exist.
No, that you exist, that we exist.
You actually can't be certain that I exist.
I'm talking for myself and you for yourself.
No. I had this discussion a few days ago. You cannot prove that somebody else exists, and you cannot prove to other people that you exist. It's impossible.
I had somebody arguing this, which is absolutely pointless to any conversation. But what they said was, well, come up closer so I can slap you in the face and tell me then I don't exist, which is good enough for me. But also, I don't engage in solipsism because it's absolutely pointless to do so.
I agree, but it still stands that you can't prove that anybody external to your mind actually exists.
I mean,
So it's not just a given that I
I
exist.
assume is the case. But yeah, it is an assumption.
Right. Yeah.
No, the point is that the only thing that you can be certain about is that you exist.
Yes.
I grant that much, yeah. And in order for any sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Any thought experiment, you're going to have to assume this is the case. So,
well,
I don't know why was this brought up as a point.
No, but you have to assume that from your perspective. But you cannot assume that that is true from my perspective. That's why I brought it up.
Why does that matter?
Because you said it's given that I exist.
No, for the sake of the thought experiment, yes.
No, you arguing from your point of view, it is a given that you exist from your point of view. From your point of view, it is not a given that I exist. You could be having a conversation with artificial intelligence right now.
Sure, but that's not I don't know why did you brought it up. What I was trying to get you to was to imagine yourself being existent. I mean, that was the sort of the underlying thing and the assumption that you should.
Well, no, if I don't exist, I can't contemplate the laws of logic. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
So it will be silly for me to bring it up as a thing if we assume you don't exist at all. So we're gonna have to assume that I meant, imagine you exist. Imagine there is no other information influx that's passing through your mind for you to process. Would you be able to make sense of things to the point where you'd be able to create the laws of logic to describe your experiences?
Well, no.
Correct.
But
and
that
so
doesn't
it's
mean that
solely based off of experiences.
No, it's not. Logic doesn't depend on me.
It does. It's a subjective thing. It's a descriptive to our experiences about reality. It's officially recognized as a formal language.
We've circled
I don't know.
back,
Google it to fact check me.
We've circled back to the beginning.
Yes.
And the only place this is going to lead is to incoherence again.
It's absolutely coherent for me. I cannot do anything else past what I've already presented.
You already agreed that your mind and your language can't comprehend the concept of, like, reality external to your perception. How is that not equivalent to incoherence?
No, I assume that external reality exists.
And that it's different from your perception?
Yes, what we perceive about reality is not necessarily in compliance with what reality actually is.
Wait,
it's an approximation.
Okay, so you said you assume that external reality exists, and then when I asked you if it's different from your perception, you said yes. So what are you basing that assumption on?
When you look at the tree, I'm going to go with it very basic. When you look at the tree, do you see everything about the tree or just the surface things that your senses are capable of perceiving?
Well, it depends on how you're looking at the tree.
Just standing in front of the tree and looking at it. Through your senses, nothing external, no extra measurements being done by any machinery or helping tools.
That's not external to your reality, that's within your reality.
No, well, there is the thing that prompts that experience of tree. And you describe it as a tree because of how you
It's
experience that prompt.
it's just simply that we at some point in the past created the word for tree, and that word then generates an image in our brain so that when we look at a tree we say, oh, that's a tree. I don't understand how
And how
that's
can you
like a,
demonstrate that? So both of us have the same issue.
again, this doesn't mean that the concept of tree in its truest sense is external to your reality.
I think we're going between the place versus the map we create about it. I'm of the stance that reality exists and I exist within it. And it grants us and prompts us with experiences. Now, from what we experience about it, onwards, with making sense of things, describing it, and those experiences, everything is subjective. It's an approximation of what reality actually is. But reality is still there, and it grants us with experiences. We can interact with it, we can gather some information about it.
I take issue with you saying it's an approximation. Like, there's no way
Yes.
for you to demonstrate that what reality actually is any different from your perception of it. There's no way for you to demonstrate that. If there were, you would be like the most profound philosopher to ever live. You understand that, right?
I've tried to give you the example with the tree when I used the word tree, the
It's-
descriptive of.
It's still within
To-
our reality, our perception of reality.
Yes, what we perceive as a tree is not the fullness of what tree actually is. And we know so because,
But you don't know that.
yeah, we know that. We know chemistry, we know molecular biology, we know
But that
all
still
the
exists
things that are happening
within
under the
your
surface.
perception.
No,
Just
but we
because
only
you're-
know
just
it
because
we
you're
had
looking at it
tools to
through
be
a
able
lens-
to investigate.
Just because you're looking at it through a lens of a microscope doesn't mean that it's external to your reality, because you could still perceive it. That doesn't make any sense.
There's plenty of things that we've learned about. Virtually every knowledge that is being obtained about what reality might be, or our approximations and understandings about it, was something that we didn't know because we were so limited in our understanding about it. Meaning, what we understand about reality is limited. It's not a reality itself, it's an approximation to it. That's what knowledge is, obtaining new sets of information by understanding a better understanding reality.
Yes, but our lack of understanding is still not evidence that these things are external to us. So are you saying that at one point cells were external to our perception of reality, and then when the microscope was invented, they came within our perception of reality?
Correct.
It was still possible for us to observe these things. We just hadn't created the technology yet.
Reality exists as it does.
Of all things, technology is not the determining factor of whether or not something exists outside of our reality.
But it doesn't necessarily has to be technology. There are other means by which you could correct your comprehension of what you experience, of what about reality is that you experience, which I cannot come up with at the moment, but I'm sure there are other ways. For example, the way we perceived Earth was it being flat at some point back in history because of how we perceived it, but
And then
further
we
down the line,
invented
we actually figured out
ships.
it wasn't the case.
And then we invented
Sorry?
ships, which are a form of technology.
Well, no, simple mathematics that we've come up with actually.
I would argue that mathematics is also technology.
If you want to look at that, sure. The point is that how we experience things versus what things are differs. It's an approximation of what reality is. It's not the exact thing about reality.
Yes, but our perception doesn't change anything about reality.
Correct.
It is still the case that these things exist the way that they do.
Correct.
Like-
I never argued the opposite.
Okay, so if every single other person on Earth, like if I go back to the 1200s and I take a microscope with me and I look at like cells, is that somehow violating like
Sorry, I had to get the other earbud because this one is almost drained out of battery. So if you're going back in 1200s and you get yourself a microscope, and
yeah.
that's where I've lost you.
Yeah, so if I go back to the 1200s and I take a microscope with me and I look at cells. Those cells still exist within those people's perception of reality. They just don't possess the technology to see them.
How can you perceive something you don't see or have access to?
I didn't say that. What I said was they still exist within that person's perception. I didn't say they can perceive them.
Then it's not in that person's perception if it's not perceived.
It exists within the perception.
What do you mean by perception? Now you're confusing me totally.
So I look at this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that because I can't see the microchip in my phone, it is outside of my perception of reality?
No, that's not accurate description, analogy, because you already know that microchips exist and those devices take some of those in order for them to function. So it is something that we already know. What I'm saying is that what reality is, how it functions, and all of its correlations and, whatever the case it might be about reality, is as is. What we know about and what we are capable of perceiving is a separate thing. It's an approximation of what it is. And we know that it is an approximation because we have never at any point have had all the knowledge about reality because we're limited in our perception about it.
Facts about things don't change simply because we can't observe them.
And you wouldn't know they're factual because you have no access to them prior
Yes,
having
but
access to
it
them.
doesn't change the fact that they still exist. Like if I didn't know that there was a
Yes,
microchip
that's not what I'm
no,
arguing, though.
listen. If I didn't know that there was a microchip in here, there still would be a microchip.
Correct. But you cannot say there is a microchip there. You're limited by your perception about what reality is.
Whether or not I can say that there's a microchip in there doesn't change the fact that there is one.
You wouldn't know what a chip is if you had no idea
But
about
it's
its
still
existence.
there.
It wouldn't make any difference. We're talking about how you perceive reality and how you describe those perceptions.
But I'm perceiving the cell phone, right? That microchip still exists within the thing that I'm perceiving.
Yes, because you know. Yes, correct.
So it exists within the perception. It may not be
Yes,
perceivable to me, but it exists within the perception.
Sure, you can describe it this way. And now I'm getting what
Oh.
you're saying.
Okay, yes. Sorry,
Sure.
it took me a while to get to the analogy, but we got there eventually.
But this is what I was trying to give you as an analogy with the tree. We now know how trees function, what they are in a microscopic level, and how they, process all the nutrients and sunlight and everything about them. Prior to that, we didn't. And what we perceived about them was just the surface area of things that we had access to. So because this was an approximation of what tree is, and we learn later on, we gain more knowledge about it, we know it was an approximation. It wasn't the actual thing about what tree is.
Right, but the cells of the tree and
Mhm.
the phloem and the xylem of the tree still existed within our perception, even though we couldn't actively perceive them. So we were
If you don't have,
we still had an accurate perception of reality. We just couldn't perceive every single tiny little detail in that reality. That's what I've been trying to get at this entire time.
but this is very misleading language because it can be interpreted that everything is in the known, it's just that we don't always have access to it, which is not the case. If there is nothing, if you can't perceive a thing, you cannot know about it. You cannot experience it. That's why you cannot know about it. You have not perceived it.
Yes, but
And so
again,
it doesn't mean it's not
still
existent.
It still exists within that perception.
The point is, our perception versus what reality is are two separate things.
No.
We don't know about its fundamental nature.
We just demonstrated that that isn't the case.
No. You used a little bit of tricky language there. I disagree with.
It's not trick language. I feel like
There is the
everybody
place and how it
who's
functions
watching
versus
me-
what we perceive about it.
I feel like everybody who's watching me understood that perfectly.
But you describe things that we already have prior knowledge on. And you cannot make the same analogy
Okay,
by giving me something we don't know about.
Give me an example of something that we don't know about.
What dark energy is, for example.
But we know that it exists.
No, we know that it influences matter, but we know it exists, yes.
Okay, give me an example of something we don't know about. We don't know the existence
Yeah, we don't
of.
know what it is. We know it exists, but we don't know what it is. And so we perceive
Give me an
indirectly that such thing
example.
exists, but we have no knowledge about it.
Give me an example of something about which we are unaware of its existence.
Basically, everything we don't know about,
Like
or
what?
we haven't had idea about.
Give me an example.
But every current scientific knowledge was not known prior its discovery. So
Give me an example.
every single current thing that we currently know, scientifically speaking, was once not known.
Give me an example of something whose existence we are unaware of.
Again, what we describe as dark energy, we don't know what it is.
We are aware of its existence.
No, we are aware of its influence on other things we can perceive, but we don't know what it is.
You
What
already
makes
said
that
earlier.
influence?
You already said earlier. Yes, we know it exists.
No, we know what a dark energy describes is the influence of the thing on things that we observe, that we have access to.
The same thing
It's-
can be said about gravity.
It's indirect observation. We don't know about the actual thing of what it is, what
same
makes
thing-
those things
The
behave
same
that way.
thing can be said about gravity. Does gravity exist?
Yes, it's a descriptive to how matter functions.
Okay, so then so is dark energy.
But that's a general. You're asking me about knowledge, and knowledge is the highest of confidences we can have about a thing, based off of facts, data, information, yada yada, all the scientific bits. And we don't know what dark energy is. It's just a placeholder for the thing we observe, but we don't know what it is.
Right. So does gravity exist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then dark energy also exists.
Yeah, it's a type of force we don't know about.
But we know that
You
it
can describe it
exists,
this way.
right?
It's just a placeholder for the lack of knowledge on it. Yes, there is something that influences everything else around itself, but we don't know what it is.
Give me an example of something that exists that we are unaware of. Like we don't know that it exists.
How can I give you such example?
Exactly. That's why it's incoherent.
Every single bit, I mean, it's extrapolation from previous data. I don't know what to tell you. Every single knowledge that we've obtained was once not held. Meaning that's better
Right.
understanding about what reality is and how it functions.
Can you just agree
Because we
at the
haven't had
very
access
least?
to those things prior.
Can you just agree at the very least that to say that something exists when we don't know that it exists is incoherent?
No, it's not. It's extrapolation from previous experiences.
Okay, so then what exists that we don't know that it exists?
We will learn once we did.
Just extrapolate, if that's all it is.
We didn't know about quantum fields. We didn't know about quarks.
We
We didn't know about
We know that they
Earth
exist.
being spherical. We didn't know about heliocentrism. We didn't know about many things we've learned afterwards.
We know that they exist.
Now we do, yes.
Yes.
We
Now
didn't know
do.
prior. Yes.
But those things all still existed within our perception of reality.
Sure, and if you extrapolate from this, you can be almost certain that there will be new things we currently don't know about that we're going to uncover.
But
and
they would all exist within our perception of reality, right?
once they come to our attention, yes. But those would be things that
No,
we don't know
they
about
don't.
existing.
They don't need to come to our attention to exist within our perception.
Then they will not be in our perception if we don't know about them.
I already used the phone analogy. Do you need me to use it again?
Yeah, but that's descriptive to prior understanding about things.
No. Again, I already said if I didn't know what a microchip was, and I didn't know that there was one in here, it would still be the case that the microchip existed.
And then you cannot say that microchips exist because you don't know about what it is and if it's in the phone.
And again,
Until you discover it.
me not being able to say that it exists does not mean it does not exist.
Correct. But until such time that you can demonstrate it does, you cannot talk about it as if it does.
That's the whole point. You cannot demonstrate that anything exists external to our perception of reality.
what it is, what prompts those experiences that reality, the non-existent reality, grants you with? What it is that you experience? What are the prompts that make
There
those
are
experiences
none.
happen? How then perception and experience is possible if there are no prompts?
There are no prompts to suggest a reality external to our own perception.
No. Okay, I'm granting you this, and I'm asking you questions on it. If there is no external reality, and there is nothing outside of yourself to prompt you with experiences, where are those experiences coming from? What prompts them? What makes them happen?
Reality.
So you agree that reality is external and we exist within it. External to our perception, but we exist within it.
How can it be external to our perception if we can't perceive that it is?
The only means by which we can understand reality and that we exist within it if we have perception about it.
Right. So then you can't
Right.
say that there is reality external to our perception because we cannot perceive such a thing.
No, there is what you can perceive about reality, and there is what reality is.
Okay, what can you
Those are
not
separate things.
what can you not perceive about reality?
Things I have no access to.
Like what?
I cannot give an example. I've already given you prior examples.
Give me the example again.
The prior examples, every single knowledge that we currently have was once not had because we had not access to it.
Right, but as of this moment, give me an example of something that exists outside of your perception.
Of my current, well, there is nothing I can give you as an example on that.
Exactly. So then that means you can't demonstrate that there is anything outside of your perception.
Then what is the thing that prompts me with experiences if there is nothing outside of my perception? What is my perception based off of?
It's all stuff that's
what am I
within your
perceiving?
perception.
That's viciously circular, kinda. You perceive the things you perceive because of your perception, kinda. At least the way I understood it. So it's basically solipsism again. We're back to it.
Give me an example of something external to your perception. Either
Every single experience I've had-
or accept the solipsism. It's one or the other.
I cannot argue away solipsism. It's impossible.
Exactly.
But it's also absolutely useless to base any conversations off of, because currently you're talking to yourself if this is the assumption.
I'm fine with accepting that.
Well, I'm not fine because this would be a waste of time.
Well, then give me an alternate explanation then.
I've already told you, I assume that reality exists external to me, to my perception, and I exist within it. I can perceive direct experiences.
So
because this is getting
perception.
Yeah, this is what we're getting down to, personal experience. If you say that you experience reality in such a way that it's basically your mind's creation, then, and I don't perceive it this way, it's going to end up in the empire. We just cannot agree on it. That's it.
Yeah, this person
and neither of us can justify it.
This person in the chat makes a good point. You said time isn't real, so how can you waste it?
Well, I said that I experience time the way we do. Doesn't mean it's not real. It's just that our experiences of it is different. It's not necessarily the what it is we experience.
So you accept that there's no coherent position that is demonstrable outside of solipsism.
There is no coherent position demonstrable outside of solipsism. It's an unfalsifiable claim to begin with. You cannot demonstrate it true, and you cannot not demonstrate it true. So, false. Sorry, you cannot demonstrate it false. It's a useless position.
Right. Okay.
Why we have a conversation on it, though?
I don't know. It just developed into this.
I mean, we've kind of started with the what does it mean to exist, and I kind of gave you the brief understanding from how I see things.
We started with logic.
Well, no, I started in the chat before I joined in because I thought it was going to be easier to explain myself, but yeah.
Okay. So.
But yes, I'm still of the stance that math, logic, and language are simply descriptives to what we perceive about reality, that reality is external and I exist within it, and it grants me with experiences.
Based on what?
That's about sums it up. I cannot demonstrate it's the case, but it's my assumption. This is how I experience things, basically. And if you experience things differently, and it's good enough for you to believe that your way is the way, that's
possible.
Good enough.
So it's possible for your assumption to be false, right?
Yes, so it's yours.
Yeah, sure. And I accept
If
that.
you're solipsist.
I'm not a solipsist.
Sure. I said if, yeah, because I wasn't sure.
But you understand that.
What do you think? No, sorry, a swift question because I'm still on the topic. What do you think? Do you think that novel testable predictions matter at all?
Sorry, do I think that what?
Novel testable predictions.
What do you mean by novel?
Well, part of the scientific method is making predictions of things that were not previously known, and uncover them afterwards, through testings and such.
Do I think that they're useless?
No, do you think they have any use? Because I think that if our assumptions about reality are flawed and fundamentally wrong, then we shan't be able to produce as many novel testable predictions as we do through the scientific method. So
sure,
I wonder if this has any weight.
Sure, but you can't guarantee that there will be any in the future.
Well, currently everything we've learned about reality is because of those things happening.
Right, but listen closely to my statement. You can't prove that there will be any more in the future.
They're currently ongoing and it's still happening.
In the future.
Yes, you cannot prove that the sun's gonna rise up in the future either. Doesn't mean it's not gonna happen.
It's just induction. It's not like.
But it doesn't negate its reliability because so far
no, it
has gotten us.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it's gotten us quite far. So I don't know. For me, it's important, kind of a cornerstones because it's sure that a clock is right, even broken clock is right twice a day. But the rate by which scientific method yields novel testable predictions is way more than just a broken clock. And so, because this is the case, it's safe to assume that whatever they kind of assume to extrapolate to these novel testable predictions is an accurate assumption about reality. Otherwise, they won't be getting there. I don't know how to put it better in words, sorry.
Well, I mean, it might be an accurate assumption, but it's still an assumption.
I mean, let's say you and I experience the same phenomenon, and you reach to a particular conclusion about what it is, and I reach to an opposing conclusion of what it is. How do we get about to figure out who got it right, if any of us?
Well, we would have to repeat it using the scientific method.
This is what my conclusions would be. And so, whosever assumption on what this thing we both perceived is, manages to make a novel testable prediction in support of that assumption, actually grants you weight to the assumption to begin with, and the other one falls short.
Right, but we have to perceive the phenomenon first.
Yeah, sure.
So it already exists within our perception.
Yeah, there is something well, the novel testable prediction is the assumption being made based off of the current observations, saying that if what we observe is the case, then this is something we should be able to uncover about reality. And you make the testings. And if you do uncover it, and this is independently verified, then your assumption about what's going on here was correct, because you managed to make that.
There are phenomena that have occurred throughout history that we have no explanation for. So I don't think saying that if a phenomenon occurs that we are able to determine what caused it or.
No, I'm talking about when that happens. The moment you're capable of producing novel testable predictions based off of the assumption about reality that you've made, then that adds weight to that assumption. Because you've managed to produce novel testable prediction.
Oh, I see.
As opposed to somebody that is incapable of doing so.
So, like, if you're able to repeat the experiment multiple times, you can accurately assume that you'd be able to do it again.
And not only, but this independent verifiability also adds credibility to the assumption that's based off of. For example, most scientists will tell you that the universe is of physical stuff, fields and everything is physical. And that label, I'm rather not subscribing to, because it's just a description to the phenomena that we experience and have access to. Wait, I forgot where I was going with that. But because the novel testable predictions are based off of those assumptions about the physicality of reality itself, then it's safe to say, yes, okay, reality is physical. Not because it's true, but because those novel testable predictions add weight to this assumption. They're based off of this assumption.
There's nothing that, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing to suggest that there's anything outside of the physical.
I mean, to my understanding about reality, I would agree as well.
Yeah. All right, man. Well,
yeah, I was about to say I'm exhausted. I don't know why it took so much toll on me, but it was towards the end of the day, and I had a really shit day. And thank you for being cordial and patient with me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Have a good
I'm
one.
brain farting quite a lot. You too. Keep safe.